have now basically dealt with so many provisions, it's a tragedy to our country. It's a big tragedy. It's a regression from the threshold that we have crossed, and I will point them out here. And that's why it feels sad for our country that every election here we are discussing the same issue. We forgot that election is just a process. The ultimate goal is development. But we seem to be stuck in the issue of elections. That appears to be where we are at the moment. And so when you have a proviso, which of course was brought about regrettably by my constituency. I've made the point. If Nigeria will die, it will die because of we lawyers. It will die because of we lawyers. Both the bar and the bench. Both the bar and the bench. Because Section 160 in 2010 when we came on board subjected INEC to the control of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We wrote a memo to Mr. President Goodluck Jonathan, whose victory for due process and democracy was very clear. It was Jonathan that, look, we need a further freedom for our democracy to survive. Jonathan initiated the process for the first alteration of Section 160. We stated clearly that of all the executive bodies established under Section 153, with respect to the Independent National Electoral Commission, its powers to make regulation and determine its own procedure shall not be subject to the direction or control of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That was what Jonathan did and gave us freedom. Secondly, 48 hours to the election, Section 52, subsection 2 of the 2010 Act that expressly prohibited the use of electronic system in our elections. In order to give room for the use of the corridor, President Jonathan assented to it 48 hours before that election. Those were the things that we put in place as safeguards to make our democracy work. It's a student that have paid exam that should be repeating exams. I'll be asked to repeat the exam now by discussing these things that we have discussed before. Because they are there. Look at what happened to Section 77 of the current Act. You cannot spend precious legislative time in going to an area that will be covered by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria where you have zero competence. Who can contest election? Under Section 65 of the Constitution, qualification, Section 131 with respect to the President, Section 177 with respect to the Governor. All the subsections, C, were clear of the Constitution to the effect that you must belong to a political party and be sponsored by that political party. So the amendment to say that you should go to determine the time within which you can be a member is unconstitutional. If people got Section 40, go and look at it. It's very clear. You freedom of association, you can belong to any political party. You cannot regulate the political party in a manner that will regulate them out of existence. After all, look at Democratic Party here in America. Democratic Party was formed in 1828. It is today 198 years as a political party. Republican was formed in 1854. It's today 172 years. We must recognize that political parties are the essential organs of the democratic process. They are indeed, without these parties, in fact, modern representative democracy is inconceivable. So, the role of law enforcement agencies, the Constitution is very clear and good enough. Some of the provisions of the Act have also said clearly the role of security agencies. We have just entered the season of intolerance at the moment. Once we enter election period, it's a season of intolerance, where there's total disregard for the rule of law, the right of opponent, as we have seen over time. I recall in 2015 in Benin, where I served my last time in office, where a powerful politician declared in Edo State that they were going to use the federal might in Edo State. And I addressed the press conference. I called our chairman. In fact, he called. Have you read what so person said? I said, yes. I read the press conference, and I was clear to them that, look, under our watch, under my watch in Edo State, it is the will of the people through the ballot that will determine who becomes what, and not the federal might. that it is the mind of the people through the ballot that will speak loud and clear. And so we have emphasis of intolerance at the moment. Security agencies, you have a role. That's why I talk about the trinity of INEC, judiciary, and security. Your job is to create an enabling environment that will enable Nigerians to go out to vote on election day, to allow for two important crucial factors, which are authorization, that the people who are going to office are authorized to go there. It is when there's an authorization that there's a basis for accountability. Where there's no authorization, there will be no accountability. And so it is your duty to do so. Interestingly enough, the 2022 Electoral Act, as well as the 2026 Section 95, Section 97, Section 99, all of these sections are very clear that no political party or candidate shall be prevented from holding rallies. None should be prevented from holding rallies. And specifically enjoin commissioners of police. Commissioners of police, you cannot be talking about public order, write a letter for permission. No. Public institutions like civic centers, stadia, television, all of those property belong to the Nigerian people. Whether you are at the state level or at the federal level, they belong to Nigerians. And the law says that they must all be given access to use them. And in any case, with respect to the issue about venue, the principle of first come, first serve, and that what the police are required to do, according to the law, is to provide adequate security, one. Number two, in a consultative manner, and not to prevent people from holding elections. And so, I must say this, finally, that credible election is what gives life to the sustenance of democracy. Democracy is what also rekindles hope for the people. And it must be borne in mind that democracy cannot thrive in the soil of absolutism. Democracy can only survive where the rule of law flourishes. Because it is rule of law that gives viability to the practice of democracy. Without the rule of law, society and democratic practice will be nothing but the coming together of the most set of people, the most vicious, whose whims and capitals will prevail. This must not be allowed to happen in our country. We must not surrender, compromise the value of integrity. This is very key because today, outside the country, most of our people are not respected because of the fact of the way they feel that elections are conducted. Democracy is like an orchestra. The sound do not blend, it do not melt. It's a symphony, it's not a concerto. The sound of democracy, like an orchestra, its melody depends on the unique sound that different instruments bring to the entire melodious whole. All of us who have a role to play, we must stand tall. And particularly my constituency, because in the final analysis, the best elections, the best laws or best processes around the world will not give you election if we don't have men and women of integrity who will call justice by its own name to do the right thing for our country. The winner of election must be determined finally and conclusively at the court. And so the sound of democracy is a sound that will never stop at playing, because the broad outline of the 21st century is clear. It offers opportunity for people who can live together, who can work together, and give not only to themselves, but for future generations, whose faces we are yet to see, whose name we may never know. All of whom should be able to say that indeed we left behind a heritage of a credible democratic framework for our country.